We're going to be diving into Southwest today because they made some really big changes, and I think there's more coming. And it definitely has an impact on their brand. I think it's a reflection maybe of some changes in their brand. So we're going to dive right into it. So Sam, tell us a little bit about exactly what Southwest did today.
Yeah, so the big announcement today was that bags no longer fly free if you're just a regular old guy like me. It's for regular flyers, just kind of the, economy class. And that's going to start on May 28th of this year in 2025. That's kind of the headline thing, because that's obviously what Southwest has kind of built their brand on for the last, 20 years. They've actually had that for 60 years. So that is a major, major change after 60 years of being the airline that doesn't charge you for your first two bags. Some other changes that I think are significant. Now they have assigned seating and they have premium seating options. They are now going to be listed on third-party sites, so they'll be selling through Expedia.
That's a big deal.
Yeah. I think everyone who's used Southwest knows that the only way to book a Southwest flight is through their website. That's changing. That is no longer the case. The exclusivity is gone. And then earlier this year, major layoffs, 15% of their corporate team was cut. That's 1,750 people. Now, let me just ask you this. What's your gut reaction to this change? And then right after that, I'm going to kind of mirror this up against what Southwest has been up until this point. So what's your reaction to these changes?
I'm bummed. It feels counter to the history that we know of them. Kind of the core of their identity is like this low cost, low fare, budget airline for the masses, right? And I think when you look at a lot of these things that they've had in the past that were features of that identity, right? So again, their identity is not, we don't charge for bags. Their identity is, we want to be approachable. We want to be accessible to lots and lots of people to fly. And they saw, hey, one of the ways we can do that is by not charging for bags in the past. And now that's changing. So, I think there is a shift going on, and I'm really curious to see kind of what happens as a result of this. I know a lot of people are like kind of angry about it, or very fearful of it, or even projecting out and saying, hey, I'm never flying Southwest again. I don't know that I take all of those reactions as gospel, that this is the end of Southwest, or somehow they're like ruining everything about themselves. But I do think that there is a big shift happening with Southwest. And some of this is forced on them. Financially, they are having to make decisions differently than they have in the past. I also think it's also a reflection of the fact that Southwest has kind of caught up with the big major airlines in some ways, right? And so now they are a major airline. People think of them in a similar way. And I think when you think about demographics that they haven't typically really chased in the past, you think about business passengers on airlines. That's a whole category that they've always been second or third tier on. And I think we're seeing their desire to grow in that tier. Yeah. And one of the ways you do that is actually by creating some tiered status to your passengers, right? That I get a little bit more perks if I have a corporate account. I get a little bit more perks if I'm in the loyalty program. I get more perks if I fly a lot with this airline. And in the past, Southwest didn't really have as much loyalty and corporate perks because they were so flat in terms of their pricing and all their all the add-ons that all the other flights had created. So, some of it's probably chasing the market. Some of it's maybe a bit of an identity shift for Southwest. Some of it's financially motivated. I mean, you don't lay off 1,700 people in your corporate office when things are going great. So, and they're getting pressure from shareholders. And this goes to another point, which is anytime a brand goes public and is publicly owned, you're now opening up your brand to a whole different category of stakeholder that may or may not have the long-term value of your brand in mind. And so I think if you look at really remarkable brands over the long haul, many of them can go public, but they do so in such a way that it really protects the control that their leadership has over the brand itself and doesn't open source that to all of their shareholders. And I do think that maybe Southwest is encountering some of the challenges that come with being publicly owned as a brand, where shareholders are really wanting to chase immediate return, and maybe don't have the patience to stick it out. That also might be a reflection of some leadership challenges for Southwest right now. Counter example of that is, Jeff Bezos for 10, 15 years would write shareholder letters that said, hey, don't worry about us not making money. We're not making a profit. We're reinvesting everything for almost 15 years before they turned a profit as an entire company. And that really was a testament to the fact that Jeff Bezos had this ability to sell his investors on a long-term plan. And I'm not sure I'm seeing that with Southwest right now. So a lot of thoughts there, plenty more, but let's get to kind of your take on this.
Yeah, so I was curious. I'm like, okay, is there something in the brand, the Southwest brand, maybe something that's written down or something that I can pull from the past that's like, can you help me explain what these changes are? Because I'm the same way, Mike, as a customer, and I'm partial to Southwest. I actually really enjoy flying them. A lot of times I got to fly with, a camera or several bags, and I'm like, that's saving me like at least $100 or $200 right there. And now that's gone. And so here's some of the kind of written and felt elements of the brand that I just feel like do not line up with these changes. First off, Southwest has always said that they want a customer first mentality. Now, every brand's going to say that. I think Southwest actually did a really good job of that in years past with the way that they had their pricing structure, the way that they, bags fly free. That's very customer first. They surrendered a lot of money, Mike. I think I looked at it today. The numbers on bag fees in 2023 were staggering. I think Southwest still made about $73 million on bag fees in 2023. The other major airlines, it was over $1 billion. So it's there was a lot.
And they've been jacking them up, right? Creating more fees and in more categories and increasing those fees.
Yeah. And it's insane. And so, another element of the Southwest brand that a lot of people know and love was the low cost, no frills simplicity, right? You buy a flight with Southwest and you have no fear that you're going to be tagged with an extra fee, or you're going to show up to the gate and you have to pay for, you got to pay for that bag. It's too big, whatever. It was easy, right? A lot of what flying with Southwest was, it was easy. You showed up, you got on the plane, you don't have to worry where your seat was. You took the first available one you liked best. You sat down and you enjoyed your flight. The other thing that Southwest has been really, really high on is their company culture, right? Working at Southwest is fun. You're going to be taken care of as an employee. I get it. You have to survive financially as a company. But man, when you make decisions and those decisions have impacts for 1,700 employees, that is really tough on your corporate culture. Okay. And again, when you're a public company, there are things probably outside of the control of the brand on the brand level. Independence and distinctiveness, Mike, this is a big one. I feel like Southwest has gotten rid of in one fell swoop, like everything that made them distinctive in their market, right? So the fact that now they're going to be compared to all other airlines on sites like Expedia, Travelocity, all that. That's not a huge deal for me, honestly. But it's the other things. No more free bags. No more, sit anywhere you like. You have to pay for a better seat. All of the things that made Southwest this very unique and independent, almost like, hey, we're holding out. We're holding out. We're going to be the airline that holds out for you, the people, our customers. That's all gone now. And then just the consistency with the brand. I feel like Southwest did a really good job for a long time being really consistent with their brand and how those values and traits were lived out all the way down to the people, ushering the airplanes in and out of the gateways, right? So those 5 things, Mike, I kind of pulled out. I'm like, I don't see any connection here. This feels like just hey, we're struggling financially and we're going to take a deep dive or rather a dive headfirst into the deep end of this and see if it works out financially. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with every one of those points. And I do think like this is probably, if you've been following Southwest for a little while, you know that there's been a slide away from the things that they were known for. And I think we're seeing the culmination of that slide. Some of that is just the choppy waters they've had to deal with over the last 5 years financially. I mean, all the airlines got absolutely slaughtered in 2020. And I think when you watch the big players in your market all rebound from that to some success because they have all these extra fees, that's really, really hard to say no to that money. And, you know, I think that's the catch-22 that Southwest is in, where they're like, we want to remain true to our brand, but at the same time, we have to honor that our shareholders want to make money.
Yeah.
And that's really hard. And I think that, again, just goes to my point of like being really, really careful with your brand of who you're letting in. You know, we work in a lot of industries where a lot of private equity exists and is doing a lot of activity. And one of the things, you know, if you're owner of a business and you're considering, you know, partnering or taking money or doing some kind of investment, certainly if you're going public, one of the challenges that you have is that you're releasing some level of control of your brand and really guiding that brand for the long term. And so I do think this is a great example of, you know, a tough negative example of when you take on public money, you take on new shareholders who have some demand on your brand. And when things are going great, they're not going to get very vocal. When things get really hard, they're going to get really vocal. And to be honest, shareholders of publicly owned companies, by and large, do not care about your brand in the long term. They're just trying to realize short-term gains, maybe midterm gains at the best. And so I do think, like, you know, Southwest is in a tough spot. Like, I'm kind of feeling for them right now. Like, I'm like, yeah, I think you're making some hard choices here. I kind of want to see it play out a little bit more before I come down really hard on them and be like, you've lost the plot and you guys just don't get it at all. You know, I think there's a way in which to do these things maybe better. I think they can do a better job communicating these changes and how they're going to remain customer first in their mentality. I also want to acknowledge that, like, the way Southwest was born is maybe not where they're at anymore, right? I think it's really clear. Like, they were for a long time were like a budget airline, and they were in the category of budget airlines. They'd be considered with like Spirit and Frontier, right? And I don't think people put them in that category anymore. I think they look at them and go, oh, it's a competitor to Delta and American and other really big airlines. And the reality is they sit somewhere between those two. And I think they're in a tough spot because I don't know that financially you can actually sit in the airline industry as a kind of mid-tier option. I don't think that tier exists or is really a long-term viable business. You either need to be a true budget airline and go down into kind of that category of like, we're just another Frontier Spirit who's just, you know, it's not a great experience, but you also don't pay much, right? Or you really do need to play with the big dogs and you need to, unfortunately, play alongside them. I think the real challenge for Southwest now is what can they do to demonstrate their clear differentiation amongst those big airlines? And I don't think they've done it. I don't think they're doing it with this. And I think that's a really, really big missed opportunity. Like, I think for every time you have to make a change that you know everyone's going to hate, you should have another change ready that's like, we think people are going to love this. Now, caveat to all that, nobody likes change. And so it does not matter what you do. You could change something that you think is going to be amazing for all your customers. I guarantee you there'll be a bunch of really loud ones who will say, I hate this. That's just how people are. So I think they're kind of, you know, let's see what happens over the next few weeks, maybe month or two, and see if there's some other things that they can do to kind of balance this. And then I'm going to put my, you know, capitalism hat on for a second as a business owner and just remind everybody, this is a highly regulated industry. And there's some really interesting things that Southwest is up against that none of the other big players are up against. And that is, namely, they have very limited access to airports. There are a bunch of airports that they have really had to spend a lot of time and money trying to get into, and even then don't get the access that the other airlines do. So the big airlines, especially American and Delta, have a pretty strong stranglehold on some of the airports out there because there's a lot of behind the scenes negotiations with cities and states that control which airlines can get in there and what flights they can get access to. And that, unfortunately, is a really big headwind for Southwest and continues to be a big headwind for them. So, they're not playing with a full deck of cards. So I want to give them a little bit of grace on that side. I love Southwest. I'll be honest, like I was telling you earlier, it's like, man, I've flown Southwest less and less because they don't really cater to business flyers very well, at least as well as the others. Not least because the accessibility of flights is so much better, especially back east with Delta and American. And I think that perhaps, I'm hopeful here, perhaps this is an attempt, and I looked at some of the reasons of why they're doing these things, at least why they've stated that they're doing them. And it is, I think, to create a business class tier for Southwest customers, something they've not really ever had.
Right.
And they're really trying to cater to business customers with this. And unfortunately, what that means is anyone who's not traditionally a business class customer and doesn't care about those things is probably going to feel like, oh man, I'm getting the short end of the stick here. I don't know. I'd argue maybe a little bit of this is like, hey, the idea of free bags is nice, but if your business can't handle it, you can't offer it. You can't just give money away just because you like it. And unfortunately, it's going to ruffle a lot of people the wrong way when you've done it for so long.
I feel like they could have gone down to like one bag flies free, right? Like test that out and then go down to 0. But they just totally cut it off cold turkey and said, we're done with free bags. And, it's their choice, but I'm sad. And we'd love to know what you guys think. Drop a comment down below. What do you think of this decision by Southwest? And if you like this video, smash that like button and subscribe, as we are going to continue to put videos out just like this on this Remarkabrand channel. We're super excited to do that. We'd love for you to join us.
And don't forget, you are remarkable.